Hi everybody, I am Claire Hedin, and I decided today was the perfect day to do my first ever podcast, and it's called Really Fabulous Claire, and it could have been called a million things, and maybe you can tell me what you'd like it to be called, but originally it was called Artist Becoming Human, and I might go back to that, and here's why. I grew up in England. And I was actually born in 1964. So that was a little while ago now. And when I grew up, I was growing up in the south of England in Essex. And both Essex, London and Suffolk are all kind of home for me. This is a long time before I thought of moving to California, where I live now. But I felt like I didn't really belong. I couldn't really understand why everyone wanted to talk about makeup, cars, soccer, and, I don't know, money. It was like, why aren't they talking about anything interesting? But the thing was, I actually didn't have a name for what I wanted to talk about. I hadn't met it yet. But now I understand, and that's thanks to living in California. So the thing I really needed was to be able to talk about consciousness. And the other thing I needed was to be able to live in a place where being creative was normal. Growing up in the south of England, creativity was, I don't know, I guess we just didn't even talk about it. Creativity was this environment that I think was only attributed to artists, and artists were only recognised if they were hanging in the Tate Gallery or the Royal Academy, or, I don't know, if they were dead and somehow in the British Museum or something like that. So once an artist had become deified and their artwork sold, even if they were considered to be total losers while they were alive, like Van Gogh, for instance, or if they were deified whilst they were still alive, like Jeff Koons, who was just really dealing in plastics. I suppose he might have been doing a commentary on the postmodernist world, I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, I think the point is, I didn't see where I belonged. And it was only through changing my situation that I had an opportunity to start to find situations where who I was didn't need to be explained. And I could actually just speak about the things I cared about, like politics, social unrest, social inequity, sexism. I mean, good God, when I went to art school, I went to the Academy of Art first, and I was doing my undergrad, and I hadn't even realised that there were such a thing as female artists. Can you believe that? And it was because of how I grew up. I grew up seeing only male artists. And so my assumption was, I didn't even know I had an assumption, but the assumption I had was, oh, well, I guess women don't do art. Maybe we don't have anything interesting to say. And it's like, wow, talk about far off the mark. And I started coming across female artists in the library, in the art school library, which was all art books. And the first few female artists I found, I assumed they were male. You know, like I found a Helen Frankenthaler and I thought it was Rothko. I just assumed because it was a similar style. But then I saw it was a woman and I was like, hang on a minute. And eventually I ended up going inside the colour library, which is where you have all the slides of all the art of all the artists from around the world. And I just did a mad search on women artists, and there they were. And I remember just pulling out all these slides, and I forget how I documented them. I wish I could find it. But there were loads. And the more familiar ones now, of course, are Georgia O'Keeffe and Judy Chicago and Cindy Sherman. I mean, it's rich, rich, rich territory across every genre, of course. So yet again, the men had written history, his story. And women were kind of relegated to the shadows. And this was true in their actual lived lives too. You know, you always got the boys' clubs and stuff. And so from a woman's perspective, it's fascinating now to see that the only way we're going to save ourselves is by an integration between the masculine and the feminine. And for men, like, to realize they don't have all the answers just because they've got genitals, male genitals, I should say. So women have genitals too, and I don't think that has any association with intelligence any more than male genitals. But for some reason, this idea that if you're a man, that you've somehow got all the answers is like this really bonkers, absurd, completely illogical deduction that, guess what, a man made somewhere along the line. So this is a shout out to all the women listening. We are in our prime time. It doesn't matter what age you are, but now is the time for all the women to step forward and to really speak up on behalf of the intelligence that's available through the feminine. And it doesn't matter how you wear your femaleness or your femininity, it's still essential. It still needs to be in the dialogue and in the action of turning things around. Having left the men to be in charge has resulted in an industrialization and a domestication of our souls and our minds, of our working habits, and of our sense of entitlement to be creative, to not have to work, right? We've created a monetary system that has enslaved and indoctrinated people into believing that we must work 40-hour weeks. Now, I haven't done that for ages. The result of that is I don't necessarily have much free cash, but what I do have is free time. And that is irreplaceable. And with that free time, I read and I think and I research and I paint and I make music. I design things and I talk. I have conversations with people and I provoke thought. So I hope you are going to contribute and stick around and help make this podcast worthwhile, because we need voices. We need the voices of the people who are thinking outside the box. And on that note, I'm going to play my outro. Thank you for joining us.